So our
Yes.
show is going to be this week about the word morality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That
real
morality
deep dive.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about what
Oh,
morality is?
well, it, morality is in the eye of the beholder to some extent.
Yeah.
Of course, there are certain things that, and I'd like to say laws help.
Yeah.
However, sometimes that's just the opposite.
Right.
Uh, I, I, I think people get really uptight in the name of morality,
Right.
and I think it's not good. Except that you need to have certain laws.
Right.
Well, like a whole bunch of homosexuals in the UK basically committed suicide in the 50s,
Oh.
probably into the 60s,
Oh, wow.
and because it was against the law and to be homosexual.
Right. Right.
And Alan Turing was one of them.
Oh, really? The Turing test guy?
Yep.
Huh.
He got after they used him.
Right. Right.
They arrested him, and he had a choice of chemical castration or being in jail, I
Jesus.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And think about how
Uh,
long ago this was. This is only like
Actually,
60
This,
years
yeah,
ago.
so like this is
70
I
years
know.
ago.
relatively recent.
I was awake. I was alive.
Yeah.
I was alive. I was a kid,
Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
I think he chose chemical castration, and he just couldn't take it
Right.
after a couple of years. It was just too much. But it happened to a bunch of other people too. So that kind of morality, I mean, where people think they're being moral, just drives me crazy.
You
As a
mean
matter of
like
fact,
trying to cure homosexuality?
well, for one thing, yeah. Well, or just dismissing its existence.
Right. Right. Or
Um,
ignoring.
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, I just grabbed that as an example. There's so much more to morality
Yeah.
than that, certainly.
Yeah. Wow.
But
Way
live a
to
good
way to
life.
bum us out right before the show, Nora.
Well,
Jesus.
I got another one.
Okay. Let's
Oscar
Sure,
Wilde.
yeah.
yeah. What?
Oscar Wilde, 1895.
Uh-huh.
He's arrested, but he's only arrested because he was seeing the son of a nobleman of some kind,
Okay.
lord somebody,
Right.
and he tried to actually things were just sitting there. But Oscar Wilde tried to sue the lord whoever, and that's when the guy said, "Nope, not going to do that." And that he didn't. I mean, Oscar Wilde didn't have the same problems as chemical castration or anything. I
Right.
believe he was in jail for a while.
Yeah.
But this is so weird. Do you guys know in like Ireland and parts of England and Scotland and stuff, if somebody's doing something really weird, they say, "Oh, off with the fairies." He's
No,
off
I didn't
with the
know that.
fairies.
Oh, like
Yeah,
this is like a saying.
yeah,
Oh.
yes, yeah.
Strange.
And it kind of means somebody's just sort of nuts. Well, here's an excuse. He's off with the fairies. In 1895, that was written in the newspaper about Oscar Wilde,
That he was off with the fairies.
and that's how the word fairy got.
Are you kidding me?
No,
Seriously?
I read a book
What?
that was
The
a
word
wonderful
the
book.
word fairy used
Yeah.
to be,
I
and I
know.
don't know if you guys still use this,
No.
or I mean, or
Right,
if it's
that's what I
used at
didn't
all.
think.
I don't mean you guys
Right.
use this,
No, yeah,
but you know what I
but
mean.
like in
But yeah,
today's, yeah.
it's like it's the if you're gay, you're a fairy. That's what.
That was back from when I was in school and
Yeah.
stuff too, and I don't know how it's traveled.
Although
I mean, how well.
although Dad always thought it was funny when he went to New York and they had the T-shirts on that said Staten Island Ferry on them,
Oh, Jesus.
and they were wearing them proudly. He would always mention
Oh my
that was funny.
gosh.
Oh
but,
dear. Okay.
But not in
No.
a bad way. Just the fact that it's like it's a Staten
Yeah.
Island Ferry.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
two things
So-
that don't really, I guess,
Right,
Staten
right,
Island.
right. sorry I brought the morality issue down.
I don't know how you get an uplifting sort of thing out of morality. Maybe I should have thought the word out a little bit better.
I mean, I feel like it's too
It's
vague.
more of a learning
Like,
thing.
yeah,
to me.
See, it's kind of like all the laws and stuff, right? That's kind of like creating the issues. It's like, what grounds, what moral grounds are you basing all of this on is kind of like where
Yeah.
it's like, you know, obviously everyone's like, not everyone, but like a lot of people are like, okay, well, religious standpoints.
Yeah.
That's how we got on the topic last time we were talking about religion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. There's just so much gray, like we were talking about, so much gray area.
Yes, indeed.
You know,
Yes, indeed.
what threshold is there that like after you reach a certain point, it's like, okay, that's not moral anymore, even if it is. You know what I mean? Obviously, there is one, but it's like what dictates that for sure.
That was always the thing for like how do you get into heaven? What is the scorecard look like? What is that?
Yeah.
You know, how does that work?
Yeah.
Because it sounds ridiculous. It's like there are certain people, you know, like if you live a sheltered life and don't do anything, how is that good?
The Notre Dame football team could probably tell you because they keep scoring with God.
Okay.
But they pray at the beginning of each football game. They're all praying.
Uh-huh.
So what are they praying for? That they win?
Yeah.
It's like they're just getting points from God. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, I went to Catholic high school and I played varsity sports, and we would pray before every game like that. And it was
What did
kind
you
of
pray?
it was
To
kind of
win?
like that everybody's safe, that it's a fair game, that like
Okay.
kind of like that thing. I mean, I guess kind of like help us like come together to like beat our opponent.
Jesus,
but, like,
help us
yeah.
win.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, it's a little. Now looking back on it,
Yeah,
I'm like, what
yeah.
were we doing?
Well, if you like say, okay, hope nobody gets hurt, hope it's fair game, that's good.
Yeah.
But I know it's always, come on, we're gonna.
Yes. That was one of Jesus's touchdowns right there.
Yes.
literal Hail Mary. you
Yeah,
know?
literally.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Hail Mary.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of positive things. If you're moral, maybe you're happy.
Yeah, I don't.
Except
you know what that
whose
brings.
definition?
Yeah.
Then also, it's like we were talking about the Euthyphro dilemma earlier. Is something morally good and pious because God made it that way, or is it because God loves it, like, and it already was? Does that?
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's kind
Yeah.
of like a standard there. Like, okay, well, are you happy being moral because, like, you know,
Right.
you're doing the right thing, or you know what I mean? It's kind of like
Yeah.
because that's like human nature. Like you're being morally happy, like
Yeah.
intrinsically, I guess. Like you're having
Yes.
like a feeling.
Yeah, and it would be nice if you were doing it intrinsically, and everybody was morally happy. Trouble is, somebody's morals are going to bump up against somebody else's morals. That's the big problem with the world today.
Moral friction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like tectonic plates or something, but morals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Very interesting.
well, okay. I'm still trying to think of something happy about it.
Well, I mean,
Aesop's Fables. That's it.
what?
Aesop's Fables. There's a moral to the story.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Those are good morals there. Yeah. Aren't those?
Unless you're the grasshopper.
Yeah. There's something that rhymes with morals that is a mushroom or something.
Yeah,
A mushroom.
Right.
Is it?
We just keep talking. Morel.
Morel? That's what it is.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, it is.
Fungus
I just didn't think
everywhere.
I totally forgot that existed until you brought it up right
Yeah,
now, actually.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh, you're gonna love the word association on morals coming up when we do the show. By the way.
Oh, I bet.
Oh yeah, you're gonna love it. It's more dad-worthy humor.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can get down with some, dad jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
opposed, you know.
Good.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead and start the show then.
Yeah,
So,
because I really don't have a question.
yeah.
Because everybody should have the same morals I do, and everything would be fine. Right.
There's a song by this band called the Dead Milkmen called "Now Everybody's Me." That's basically like everybody was me, it would be like so much easier for life. Like
Yes.
all the basketball hoops would be 5'3", all the, just like all this stuff, because now everybody's me.
Right.
So
Not
anyway,
familiar.
yeah, but it's
okay.
it's a silly punk rock song.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank you, Norah, for this warm up.
Yeah, thank you.
So okay. Well, anyway, you go and enjoy yourself
All right.
and have a
Thank
great
you.
moral discussion. Really, really. There's so much to talk about.
There's almost too much, but
Yeah.
I think we'll try and trim it as much as we can. But Jenna's going to bring most of the theory because that's like what she's studying.
Oh, okay.
I'm taking a moral thinking class, a philosophy class, and I'm also taking a feminist philosophy class. We talk a lot about like current events. And then also, because I mean, feminist philosophy, it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, you think of like women and women's rights, but it's kind of like, obviously men have been the main like dictators and like what is academia, like at least in philosophy for a really long time. So it's kind of like the opposing side. So it's not just like women, it's just like also the opposing side to those like theories and stuff. You know what I mean?
I understand. Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah, so we'll have some things to talk about for sure.
Yeah, I can have a discussion with you then. But anyway, I do want you to get on with your show.
Okay.
And good luck with your radio show too, Jen.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Should be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Norah.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Hello, my name is Ben.
And I'm Jenna.
And we are the hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week, where our word is very, very deep.
Yeah, super deep dive.
Super deep. And I'm excited because Jenna's on the show for, third time? This is your third time, I think?
Yeah. Third, yeah.
And it's kind of, it kind of dovetails nicely to what we talked about, or what you and Phoenix talked about on the last show with religion. Our word this week is morality.
Ooh.
Yeah. But before we start, I want to say that I'm also excited because you gave me one of my favorite sayings ever now.
Oh my God.
Which is, only hot girls get IBS.
That's like, okay, it's pretty valid though. As someone that has like mild IBS, not gonna lie, like sorry if this is like a little TMI for anybody out there.
You don't need to get into that much detail.
No, I'm not. But like, I don't know. I would consider myself a hot girl. Like, sorry. I'm like, I need like a little self-esteem booster in there somewhere.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Like, it's pretty valid.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I would say the same about myself. I'd call myself a hot girl too.
Oh my God, yes. I agree.
Noted. So when I say the word morality, I'm guessing one of the things that you think of is your schoolwork. But is there anything else that you think of? Because you're taking a couple of courses in philosophy on morality at the moment, right?
Yeah, I'm taking like a moral thinking class where we just like discuss a lot of like moral theories and like what makes like, you know, a moral theory. There's like certain components, but then like what they entail and like how people come up with like what is right and what is wrong, or an action is wrong if. And then the other class I'm taking is feminist philosophy. I mean, it's not necessarily like as like explicit like this is morality. It's more like we discuss current events, but since it's like, you know, I was talking about it earlier, like feminist philosophy, it's like men have dictated the academia for so long,
right,
that it's kind of like, okay, it's the opposing view. So like it is feminism, you know, like the other side of things. So we just talk about like current events from that perspective.
From a female perspective?
Well, not even like female, but like just the other side of things. So it's kind of like we look at things from like all viewpoints kind of, and we try to be like as inclusive as possible and just like discuss like current events and like we've been talking a lot about like the whole thing with Ukraine and like stuff like that in that class, which is really, really cool. But, you know, also like really insightful and like, you know.
I don't understand the feminist part of it. That's the part that's confusing to me, because it seems like if you're not talking about how the feminine point of view is, or you know what I mean? And maybe just because I'm an old dinosaur, maybe. it seems that if you're talking about real world events and trying to be as open-minded as possible, it's not feminism. It's just,
well, the thing is it's like, okay, so men obviously have dictated like what is like in politics and like, you know, academics, everything, what it is. And then the feminist viewpoint is kind of like, what is the other side of it? Like there's a duality.
Right.
Like it's kind of like, okay, well, like, okay, let's take this example. I can explain it better maybe. Like philosophy, right? Philosophy for a really long time was always like an objective point of view. Like when you're making a philosophical theory, you think about things objectively. Like, oh, like if you create a scenario, you're not thinking about things like, okay, well, what if I have like a family member in this scenario? You're thinking about it like, no, I'm an objective standby, like an objective viewpoint on all of it.
You're trying to.
Feminist,
anyway,
yeah. The feminist viewpoint of that would be like, no, but like think about it from the other perspective. Don't think about it from objective. You know what I mean? Like objective, subjective. Like it's the other side of the coin, I guess, that like,
okay, so it doesn't matter, gender doesn't really have a lot to do with it.
It's just, it's not really like gender based. It's a gender based class. We can talk about like indifferences with women too,
right?
But also that is part of like the other side of the narrative, I guess, because you know, women have, you know, been silenced and like, you know, like don't really have the same type of equality that men do in society. So
and
like
also have very specific sort of issues, like the right to choose, you know, like abortion sort of concerns, whereas men, it's none of their damn business. I mean, in my viewpoint, it's all a woman's decision. What she does in that situation.
It's like because obviously it's like the men are making the laws, so you're like right now majority so like you're looking at it from that other like, okay, well, like what would a woman say then in this sense, or like what would somebody that's not a man, so like, you know, like a person in the LGBTQ plus community, you know what I mean? So
they're included in this? So
so it's just it's the voices of the people that are not a part of the decision making for the most part,
not
I would
the majority gender, or how do we say?
It's the marginalized. Side of the, you know, the debate or the decision. Like you take that into account. Personally, for me, feminist has a lot of different, whatever that means, has a lot of different definitions and stuff. Personally, I'm a feminist because I like to think about things from the other side of like, you know, the coin or whatever. I like to think about everybody when I'm making a decision. I'm not like cutting out men either. I'm thinking about, or like, you know, the majority, I'm thinking about like as a whole, like what would benefit everyone. So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, like in that sense, I'm a feminist because I like to, you know, think about everybody and like have that. I feel like that's the moral thing to do.
Right.
So, you know,
men who say that they're feminist, to me, this is one of those things where people are people, and let's celebrate their differences. Whatever their gender is, they have different issues that they deal with, whether they're non-binary or whatever. So let's just respect that. And gender, although it's a part of society that we're navigating and we really need to make it more fair and more equal pay and all this stuff for women, you know, you just gotta, I don't know. It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
I think when I think of feminism, for some reason, I think of, and this is probably the time I grew up, but really hyper.
That's what a lot. But I mean, like, I know what you're
like
saying.
Angry, like angry.
It's what a lot of people
patriarchy.
Think of, or like, oh, we're gonna like completely like kill all men, like all men should die. Yeah, like I totally like I've heard that before, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And that's the thing too, is it's kind of like one of those things where it is the other side of things, and it is a different viewpoint. So obviously people are going to think of like the most extreme, because also since it is, you know, like you were saying, like we're navigating this whole like people coming out with like their gender, and like it's becoming socially acceptable, like obviously, you know, as it should be, but like it's very new recently. So it's kind of like one of those things where people don't know about a lot about it and are ignorant about it. So they'll just take the most extreme viewpoint to kind of be like, well, I don't know why people are like that. True feminist like theory, or true feminism, at least in my opinion, and I know it's talked about in like some articles and stuff we've read, it's like it should be all inclusive kind of thing. So I don't know, when men say that, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe they're just like, we're going to think about the other side of things, because that's what I'm assuming, because obviously they're a man. They have to have some type of like, you know, psychological egoism in the whole thing. Like, oh
Right.
yeah, like let me think about what will benefit me too. Or that doesn't make any sense. You're just doing it to like be like, oh, look at me, I'm different or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
And I think there was a time when people would say that, you know, they would say it to try and impress people, like men would say.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to throw the I'm a feminist kind of like trying to pick someone, you know what I mean? Like trying to pick someone up because
it's almost like tokenism.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, well, I'm a man and I'm a feminist. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's almost like you're kind of trying to like use it as like a,
yeah, like I have a black friend, you know,
yeah, that's,
or something to that effect where it's like, it doesn't, whether or not, I don't think that has anything to do with anything, whether you're a feminist or not.
Yeah.
What you believe in, if you believe that all people are equal, you don't have to put a label on it.
Yeah, exactly.
You just believe all people are equal. So why even label it?
Well, and then like I was telling you earlier, like if you're a human being, it's almost like you kind of have to be like, okay, well, they're another person, I'm a person, so we're sharing some type of experience.
Right.
So it's like if you're not thinking of people like, or trying to at least doing your best to think of people in like a, you know, all-inclusive standpoint, you're almost like denying a part of your humanity in some sense. And I feel like that is like immoral, because it's like, why, like what is saying that like you're on this pedestal and somebody else that's also a human being is somewhere below you? Right. Are we just going off of like social construct? Like that's ridiculous. Yeah. That's where it's like that the whole like, you know, people are like people becoming people of doctrine for like absolutely no reason. It's like we're being viewed as social constructs here, and it's like, what is the good in that? That doesn't do anything.
It's one of those questions that we can't solve it. It's going to be an ongoing process. It's a long-term sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And people will never agree on anything like that ever, especially with, you know, just so many different people grow up in so many different economic situations.
Right.
Like everything that has to do with anything, it'll stem a moral belief, or it'll like make a person who they are, like, and what they believe, obviously, because they're like childhood and stuff.
Basically, you know, shape what their fears, their hopes, their dreams, their emotional, the emotional things. But those things aren't necessarily correct or true. There's no truth about your feelings, really, other than expressing yourself as accurately as you can. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you feel something in a situation about a person, how much do you really know about that person?
Well, and
how much do you really know their situation and what they've dealt with? And why are you fearful? You know, identifying why you feel the way you do. You know, your perceptions about someone is based somewhere. There's a part that's instinct based. There's a part that's emotional based, how you were brought up. And whether those things are factual representations of the person that you're attributing them to is not always true.
Yeah, and
as long as you're open to that.
Yeah, and I'm a neuroscience major in my clinical science class, where we like learn about diagnosing people with stuff and like, you know, mental disorders and that kind of thing.
Right.
We like one of the first things that we learned was like one of the textbook, like I guess, I mean, obviously it's a theory or an assumption, like a rule in like science, is that you can only infer on what another person is experiencing.
Correct.
Because obviously there's like confounding things that can like interrupt that, like how the person, their mental state could affect how they're portraying themselves or how they're expressing themselves.
Right.
You know, there's so many different factors that go into it. We can only infer. And that's because we're all human beings. We all have at least one shared component, at least a little bit. Like there's some shared experience.
Yeah, but we're all individuals at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a simultaneous.
Yeah. It's a paradox.
Yeah, I was about to say it's very paradoxical. Like it just goes round and round for real.
Yeah.
But
well, that's what you think of when you think of morality then?
Well, yeah. But I mean also like we were talking about like in the last time I was on, like I was raised super religious. So like morality has always been such like a tight constraint on my life, where it's almost like now that I'm like out of that, now I feel like morality, there's so much gray area.
Right.
Like it isn't like a black and white thing like different religions like say it is.
Right.
I feel like for me, I'm kind of right now, I'm like kind of in like a egotistical phase of my life where I'm like, okay, well, if something makes somebody happy it's not necessarily bad.
Right.
You know, it obviously there's some exceptions to the rule, as any moral theory or moral law says there's some exceptions to the rule. For the most part, I don't know. I feel like that's also me right now being like in my early 20s. Like, I don't take life that seriously, you know?
Right,
so it's kind of like, who knows
you're
what I'll...
exploring, you're sampling.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows what I'll evolve into in like the future.
Right. That's kind of what your 20s are for, is just kind of figuring stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. You know? It's acceptable. So I'm like, whatever. Like,
just try and be the best human you can be.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all you can do.
It's kind of like, I feel like I'm a pretty empathetic person in the sense that I do a good job at like understanding where people are coming from. Right. In a certain sense, when someone says something to me, like being objective about it. So it's kind of like one of those things where that's like kind of like where I think a lot of the gray area has come in for me, is because as I've gotten older, I feel like I can understand what people are trying to say better.
Right.
It's like part of being understanding.
I don't know why I think of this when I think of morality. It has absolutely nothing to do with morality. But for some reason, I think of s'mores.
What? Why?
S'morality.
Oh my God. That is, I mean, yeah. I see it.
Okay. It's a word. It's more of a word association sort of weird thing.
It's not really like...
It has nothing to do with morality.
Yeah, it's like not the definition. We're just looking at the actual construct of the word. Yeah. For sure.
The letters. So I got a little bit of information on the origin of s'mores.
All right, I'm down.
And then we can go to more serious things.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But
this is great.
S'more is a contraction of the word some more.
I totally didn't know that before.
Yeah, I think we all did.
Yeah,
didn't we all know that? I think we did. It appeared in cookbooks in the early 20s. So s'mores didn't exist before the 20s. Mostly U.S. and Canada, described as a graham cracker sandwich with the best ingredients ever, marshmallows and chocolate in the middle. Yeah, in the 1920s, so that's where we started using the word s'mores, and they started becoming more popular, and that's when it took off.
Well,
in the 20s.
The 20s had a lot of wasn't it like the refrigerator, the vacuum cleaner, the s'more, like so many things are just...
Yeah, the cool.
Industrial Revolution, you know.
Yeah, the s'more.
Yeah.
I think that's a more important one.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever do s'mores? Like, go camping and then
oh hell yeah,
put the marshmallow on the stick and toast it over the fire?
I was in Girl Scouts for like 2-3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a little while. I was like a brownie, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a time. We like would do a big camp out, like, because I did it like with my school. We do a big camp out on like the school lawn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I remember we would like bring a little fire pit and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I mean, I feel like that's like kind of a rite of passage, and like before you turn 25, I feel like everyone maybe has had a s'more like once.
Yeah, they must.
Yeah, like
they must. Like a legitimate like.
I don't think I've ever met anyone that hasn't had one.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know. That could just be like context of like people I've like grown up with and like met here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Not to get, we don't have to get overly philosophical about it.
At least everybody in the US.
Yeah.
For sure.
And Canada.
Oh yeah.
Apparently it's a Canada thing too.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. S'mores Pop-Tarts. An abomination, I tell you.
I kind of like them.
Do you?
Yeah. Am I like... I'm like,
is
that immoral?
No, I'm not judging you. I just think that, it's... I had a thing with a particular coffee shop, which you may be familiar with.
Yes, probably.
One of the things that they can't say...
I know what you're talking about.
What?
Was it a certain drink that had s'mores
involved? No.
Okay.
I was going to talk about the Marshmallow Dream Bar.
Oh, maybe that marshmallow thought. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's like a trademark thing.
Oh yeah, it is. They can't call it a Rice Krispie treat.
No. But like Marshmallow Dream Bar, is that trademarked?
I don't know. It must be.
I know.
Maybe I shouldn't say.
No, but I remember. I remember those. What is it?
Yeah, it's just a Rice Krispie treat. It's just what they call a Rice Krispie treat, right?
Yeah.
But it's a Marshmallow Dream Bar. Very simple. Marshmallows and
and dreams
and dreams
dreams
and the Rice Krispies things, right?
Yeah.
But one year they decided they were going to put chocolate ganache on it, and I got so angry because it's like, how do you ruin a classic?
No, that's
you
so
just
strange.
smother it in chocolate. That's what you just, why would you do that?
Also, like, wouldn't that, I don't know, Arizona, check. Every time they put chocolate like that on something, I'm like,
yeah,
it's just gonna melt.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That is disappointing. I don't like that.
No, it was not good,
Yeah.
and I had a rant.
I mean, I would too, honestly. I'd be like, why? Like, you know what else I feel is unnecessary? We're going on a crazy tangent. Pennies. So we're talking about Canada. Canada has no pennies.
Right.
Why do we have pennies here? I did a whole paper on it my freshman year of college. Literally why pennies should not exist. Abe Lincoln can kick it. I don't care. I was like, or actually, no, I shouldn't say that. King.
Well, no. I mean,
but like
he's still got the 5.
Well, yeah, exactly. But as a penny, I don't like him. I don't care for him in that form.
I'm like, copper form.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, any other form, you're a great person, great 16th president, love you, amazing. But as a penny, it's so unnecessary that I just don't like. Canada literally just rounds up or rounds down. Oh my God, it's just that's another thing that I'm like, that's the unnecessary thing that I will like literally rant about forever. Is that pennies shouldn't exist? It's so ridiculous.
There used to be Canadian pennies.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
they would always get mixed up with the American pennies, and they were always a different size. And people would like you take them to the bank, and they go, you can't cash this in. It's a Canadian penny.
In high school, I went to British Columbia for like a month or whatever, a couple times, like summer or whatever, and I got a bunch of their loonies, like the dollar,
the one,
and then the Canadian quarters and stuff, and I have like a bunch left, and I used them all. No one ever told me anything, and I used that. I was like, ha 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 ha. Like I'm like getting rid of all my money that I like didn't need or whatever, because I was like, when am I going to go back to Canada in the foreseeable future? I was like, I might as well just.
It's so much easier now with bank cards, and I know my bank. Whenever I go, I've got a debit card. Mm-hmm. And it'll make the conversion for me. I don't have to do any converting. I don't have to actually get cash if I don't want to. I can just, I usually do just in case. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's like, it all transpires electronically, so I don't have to worry about conversion rates or anything like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, I do remember, and it's too much of a tangent, and I'm probably going to cut this out. But when I was in Canada, an interesting thing about strip clubs there, as it relates to loonies. Yes, as it related.
Yeah, I was like, they have
loonies.
To use loonies. Yeah,
exactly. They use loonies, and then there's a $2 version which they call toonies.
Oh yeah.
But there's the loonies and the toonies, and that's usually what they
throw at people.
Yeah, basically, it's
God.
Like it's not like you tuck a dollar bill underneath your belt or whatever. It is you just toss these things in. At the woman or in like a pit around where she's dancing or whatever. And then in between the dancers, this guy has this mechanism that is like a rope.
What? And
he's got a rope and it's got a magnet on it. And
my God.
And he just sweeps up all the, it attracts all the loonies and toonies, and then he puts them in a bucket for her, and then just, does that all
amazing.
Over the thing. And that's how they do it.
That is, I'm
Very
glad
weird.
that I know that. I mean,
I use
like the pay per showers when I was in Canada, because we like camped basically the whole time we were there. It was like a slot in the wall. You just put the loonie in.
Right.
And it was like, that's just how you pay for your shower for real.
Right.
So, I mean, they use loonies for everything. It's kind of great.
Yeah. It was just an interesting thing that I experienced while I was there. I was like, that doesn't make sense, throwing coins at people.
That is really odd.
Yep. But at least they, ingenuity, the guy doesn't have to lean over and, there's no sort of weird mechanism. He just got that magnet thing.
Yeah. How did they come up with that? That's the most like base shit. Like, we'll just take a rope and put a magnet on it, and then that's how we're going to scoop it up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess.
And it's like, it's fancy because what they do is it's got something that you engage and
like
disengage.
The magnet. Yeah.
So you do all the things, and then you put it in whatever the bucket is. The nudie bucket. I don't know what you would call that bucket.
Nudie bucket.
The nudie bucket. You release all the coins, and then then you just hand. Boy, that's just got to be tough going home with a whole bunch of.
That would be so heavy.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? Do you bring like?
I think that they must convert it to them.
No, they have to. There's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way. That would literally be like agonizing.
Yeah.
Like you like off like a however long shift, and you got to carry home like a bucket full of metal.
Yeah, carrying home a stack of, like even stack of 1s and 5s, that's fine.
Yeah. Well,
But,
I mean, it's
but
weightless.
a whole handful of
No.
loonies and toonies. I mean,
No.
geez, that's nuts. But anyway.
I love that we just talked about that. That was awesome.
Yeah. What is the morality of that?
Oh, I was literally having like a discussion with my friend about whether strip clubs and like prostitution is like moral or not.
Oh,
And,
okay.
like,
Yeah.
we were
No, this
discussing,
is interesting.
Yeah, now that that's the segue, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I guess if we could keep it in like segue. We were discussing because okay, I had my freshman year. I had a professor. She was like a head of a philosophy department
Okay.
at the University of San Diego, and she was basically not her whole thesis, but like a big part of like a lot of the books she wrote was on prostitution and whether it is feminist or like whether it is like, like just debating about like how it isn't a feminist, like, because I feel like people today have the conception like, oh, well, if you're a stripper, like you're using your body in a way that you want, and it's like empowering to the woman. But her whole thing, my professor, was that like that is perpetuating like,
Right.
First off, like rape culture
Yeah.
and like just like a lot of stigma on sexualizing women.
Mhm.
And it's just perpetuating all of it. And she had her critics and stuff, obviously.
That's kind of the same thing with all these, the OnlyFans stuff that people are doing these days.
Yeah.
It's like that's a new wrinkle in the whole perpetuating the sexualizing women. I mean, the culture says that that's wrong, but then, these people with their OnlyFans make shitloads of money.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know. It's very interesting.
Is it moral or ethical? I guess. What you know what? I was going to ask you what's the difference between those things. And before we get into the whole prostitution and what's empowering about it, what isn't.
I feel like ethics, it's kind of like more practical.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at things that you have the intent on ethics that you're going to make principles off of it.
Right.
Like it's more objective. The American Medical Association like has their code book of ethics.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like
it's more of a formalized thing.
Yeah, like it's kind of like you're looking at things from what will, I don't want to say like benefit the collective, but you're looking at
the greater good.
Yeah, or like you have to think about like a broader audience versus morality can completely be an objective, like I have my own morals, like, or I base my morals off of my religion, or you know what I mean? It's more personal. That's like what I kind of think.
Yeah.
Like when I think of the two, just from like classes I've taken in college and stuff.
Okay. What a definition that I read says is involves systematizing.
For ethic, that's ethics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior.
See, it's made for, like, it's going to have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about that when you're making the decision. Versus morality, it's kind of like you're not thinking about like making a set rule off of it. Like this isn't going to be a law that like is going to affect millions of people. It can be a personal thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you talk a lot about these types of things in your. Have you talked about this in your feminism? The whole. I don't know what the correct word is these days. You know, I think prostitute is, people say that's demeaning.
You could also
sex
say like,
worker.
Yeah, like sex worker or like
courtesan or what, I don't know what. Service and sex worker industry, that's possibly the right way to put it. Do you know?
I don't know like a correct, I just say sex worker because it's gender neutral.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I would say. Yeah. Also because it is a line of work that is centered around sexual activity.
Right.
So that's kind of like what I would say. Back
in the older days, when people were men and they were prostitutes, they had to say male prostitute. It doesn't make any sense. I do understand that it is kind of demeaning and it is perpetuating sort of a culture that treats women differently or sexualizes. Yeah. But at the same time, using sex to make money, using that, how is that a moral thing? I don't think so.
It can get confusing or it can get very...
It's
disorienting because it is like, okay, well, this is the thing that my professor, when I took her class, was one of her main points is, don't quote me on this, but like she was basically saying that statistically, women that are involved in sex work, a lot of the times they were sexually assaulted at a young age or like sometimes people that were like human trafficked will like, get out of that, and then they'll go back into sex work, like if they were really young when they were like human trafficked. She was basically saying that women that have a lot of the time grown up in those environments where they were over sexualized at a young age will go back into that work, and then it makes it harmful because it makes women then to a certain point feel like that they don't have any meaning outside of what their body can do. That was like one of her like points
in her thesis,
or like in one of her books that we did read. And then also like porn was like another thing of like how the porn industry like just treats women and stuff. That was like one of her things too, the safety measures and stuff and like those kinds of things that are taken.
Right.
It's just like not a good, that was her thing. But I don't know, I feel like it's really interesting because like I understand both perspectives, like where people are coming from.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's kind of like I feel like when you're making that decision, it's kind of like where you are on that side of the argument.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and I mean, people can do what they want to do and like feelings are valid, obviously.
Right.
But it's kind of like, it is like there's context, I feel like, that when people are...
It's not every situation is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the gray area. The gray area.
And if you want to justify it to yourself, you're going to do that. Whether or not it's the right thing to do, you can justify it by saying, oh, I am doing this, so therefore it's helping people who have hang-ups about whatever, or it's therapeutic in certain situations, or it's getting people more comfortable with having sex, or, like there are things you can say to kind of justify it. But that's where this whole idea of morality and ethical behavior, it's all so subjective.
I mean, we did talk about ethics in my feminist philosophy. We talked about like ethics of care, which is something Nel Noddings is the author that she wrote that. I think she was the first person to come up with that. It's just kind of like when we make decisions, we think about things with regard to care to everybody, which again, it's feminist, like that viewpoint. We think about people that aren't being thought of.
Right.
So like, we're thinking about like, we were talking about the whole thing, like right now, the invasion of Ukraine. Right now, we spent a whole class period on it, and everyone was just bringing up, I mean, if we're thinking about it like ethics of care, like we're caring for everyone, like refugees right now.
Right.
I mean, like refugees have been a thing like for forever. Right. Obviously, people of color as refugees have been treated differently than white refugees.
Right.
And like that's like something that we were talking about, and like injustice there, and like the double standard.
Right.
Especially right now with like how many people are fleeing, obviously like fleeing Ukraine because of this. You know, it's just like disheartening. And it's like kind of upsetting, but also like, we want to welcome everybody. Right. So it's like,
we want to welcome everybody, it seems, except anyone who seems to cross our southern border, then it's a problem for some reason. It's a very strange double standard.
Well, and we were talking about like that in itself proves like people choose what they want to care for, obviously. Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if we're thinking about it like ethically and morally, even with any unconscious bias you have, you have to like acknowledge that you have that. And then like, because everybody has some type of like unconscious bias, just because society is so like set up like systemically like against people of color and women and the LGBTQ plus community and everything. So you have to like acknowledge that and then like make decisions, thinking about like everyone, you know what I mean?
I just think, whether it's unconscious or not, I don't think that's the point, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
It's bias is bias.
No, yeah.
And I think in general it's bad, but where do you say one thing is more problematic than another?
Yeah.
This is a ridiculous sort of thing, but if a guy is getting their basketball team together and you got your pick of guys, the black guy's going to go. Why? I don't think that's a unconscious bias thing. That's something where we see it in media, therefore we associate the ethnic background and makeup and sports is a little slanted. So what does that mean? Calling it unconscious bias and not saying just acknowledge it.
No, yeah,
bias.
for sure.
You know, that's the thing I don't like. It's like blame it on unconscious bias.
Well, yeah.
Well, but that's not something you can go back and change, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And the thing is we talk about it also in the sense that obviously it's like everyone has some level of it.
Right.
Just, I mean, obviously it's
yeah.
like, yeah, that,
we're
and then
all-
also like within women, it's like women in the workplace. Women in the workplace, it's like can get like imposter syndrome, where it's like, oh, well, like you basically tell yourself that you don't deserve it because of like the internalized misogyny that like as a woman, you know, you're already like not going to get like, you know, as much as a man is going to get. So it's like, oh, well, no, I won't try out for that. I won't get it. Or no, I don't deserve that. Oh, I got the job. No, but that they made a mistake. Oh, they're promoting me. Oh, wait, there's no way. Like, you know what I mean? Like you almost don't give yourself any credit because of the way that things have been set up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously
there's also media in that whole thing. Movies, right? You get what is the test called with the women in film, and which ones are not
the Bechdel test.
Bechdel.
A measure of the representation of women in fiction. It asks whether a work features at least two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. The requirement that the two women must be named is sometimes added.
The Bechdel test. And I think, you know, looking at Disney, right? Looking at things like, you know, you've got princesses, and we're kind of reinforcing what our ideas of masculinity and femininity are through art. But is that just the way we grow as humans? Because we're doing things, we realize it's wrong, and then we change that behavior, you know, going forward. Or, you know, or you say, well, back in the day, we didn't think that was a big deal. But I mean, it's not back in the day, so it shouldn't be the same. It's a current time. It's like those things like morality and ethics, are they fluid? Do they change over time, or are they the same? Like what is good and what is bad?
With like masculinity and femininity and that in terms of like, it's an evolving idea because I feel that people are coming to the terms with like it's a social construct, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say like distrust of like the government or like, you know, like social rules or like social norms. It's becoming more acceptable because people are like, okay, well, I'm a person. There's a distance between being a person and like an institution that's like making rules. I feel like people are getting better at like discerning that there's a disconnect. They're not connected.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like there shouldn't be like, oh, well, the government says this and then that defines you as a person.
Right.
Or like, you know what I mean? Like that's what you're viewed as, and that somehow dictates a part of your personality or like who you are. I feel like people are starting to obviously come out more with the fact that there is a distance from that. I'm sorry if I'm explaining that like choppy or whatever, but like, you know what I mean though?
Yeah, no, I kind of get where you're going at.
Yeah.
Where you're going.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying though. Like, is there like an underlying moral tone to all this, and it's always shifting as humanity progresses? Or like, you know, has it always been like one flat, you know? Yeah, I get what you're saying. I the thing is it's kind of like,
so like the multimillionaire who makes all his money in oil and donates all of his proceeds to something. What is, you know, it's like, is that, you know, it's oil. It's you're ridding the earth of, you're putting pollutants, and you're doing all these evil
also
sort of
how
things.
many people are you exploiting to get the oil?
Right.
Like at a certain extent too.
Yeah, we're not even going to that. But I'm just saying, like from a planetary standpoint, right? What are you doing? You're just making lots of money. And if you give that money to, you donate it to charities or whatever, that doesn't make you, you know what I mean? That doesn't
it doesn't
make up
like
for
atone for what you've done to the planet. Yeah. In that sense.
And isn't that sort of the way that people think about people? Once you make a mistake, it's very hard, and you know, whether or not it's justified, it's very hard to come back from a mistake you make, a bad mistake, something maybe morally wrong. I mean, I don't know.
Well, also it's like, how severe is the mistake?
Right.
That's what I'm saying, is it's kind of like,
there is gray.
Like even like the amount of people that are incarcerated for like possession of marijuana and like that kind of thing. Like, and
the racial inequality.
Yeah, and the racial inequality in prisons too.
Of the prison system.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Is horrible. I almost swore, but.
Well, yeah, but that's what it's kind of like. Okay, well, what are we doing? And you know, that sense, it's like, are we? And that's the thing. I think why in my class we're learning so many. Obviously, there's so many different moral theories because there's so many standpoints that you make moral decisions from.
Okay.
You know, whether, you know, it's like you're thinking about like with like the oil, you're thinking about it from like a morally sound position. If you're thinking about the planet, is you can't fix what you've done to the planet with donating the money,
right?
Versus like the people that you're exploiting.
Right.
You think about it from the people you're exploiting, or you think about it from the planet. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different standpoints that you can come from on that. So it's like,
but it's one of those scenarios. This is all scenario stuff.
Well,
right?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying is I don't think there can be one like set ever like a black and white moral standpoint on anything, because there's so many. If you're thinking about it like, I guess empathetically, like you're putting yourself in the other side's shoes, it's kind of like you can't, because even if the other person that made, let's say, the mistake is, you know, I guess like objectively wrong, they could be doing it for a reason that in their mind is morally sound.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Even though they've committed like, you know, I guess a wrong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, at what point do you go from this? Like there's so many.
Yeah.
Like, it's why it's just like, it's such a paradox. It's crazy.
It's things you can, you know, you can argue the morality of things back and forth, or argue the ethics. It's very complicated, right?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, we did.
Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons?
Okay, no, but I really want to.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I would totally like. My friend from back in California, he was like, oh my God, I was in town and he wanted to play, but I ended up not being able to just because of like people and like, you know, you need a certain amount and like that whole thing. But yeah, like I know, I have friends that play it. I know a little teeny bit about it. I don't know like too much.
Right. From a player standpoint, you're role playing. You're playing the role of whatever this thing you created, and it's fun because it's a fantasy thing. It's not a game like a video game, but it is a game more. You're more like acting, right?
Oh yeah.
You're putting your mind in the body and
of a different being. You have a different person than you. Yeah.
You want to be an elf. You want to be a dwarf. You want to be a halfling. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My experience with Dungeons and Dragons goes back to the 80s, and I did play a little bit in high school, and there was a kid that I would play with, that I would ride my bike all the way out to Huntley, Illinois, which is, I don't know how long away it was, but it was quite a bike ride, and we would play with a bunch of people, and it was fun, but it's, in order to have fun, you have to have a good dungeon master. The person who sets it up really has to know
what they're doing.
Well,
in a sense,
know what they're doing, and then also have a passion there for the story, because you set things up, you kind of lay out, you know, whatever the scenario is, and you're at the mercy of your players making decisions that you can't accurately predict, right?
Yeah.
You sort of know the characters the way they've been designed, but you don't know what
is the actions that are going to take place.
Exactly. What people are going to think.
You got to roll with it, be on your feet.
You got to think on your toes, and not everyone can do that. And then also, it's like, that is an enjoyable experience, but you also have to be comfortable as a dungeon master with some of this stuff that you design is not going to be used. And if it doesn't get used, you can't be angry about it, because
it's like you don't know what's going to happen though.
Exactly,
so it's like like who knows if that'll even come up.
And you also need good team members. You got to play it. You got to play Dungeons and Dragons with a bunch of people that you get along with and have fun with and are creative with, because if you don't, a lot of times it's just not fun. If you've got one group of, or one person who always takes the lead or tries to lead the group or whatever. It's like
improv.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like you need a good like
good balance,
a good group. You got to have people feed off each other good, have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do improv? Have you ever done improv?
No, I did do like musical theater like as a little kid for like 3 years, and we did like some improv stuff.
Yeah.
Like just because, and like exercises or whatever. But like no, I'm like, Yeah, I just kind of like
You just think of it as imagination is
yeah,
all it is.
yeah,
And
and just like roll punches and like yeah, that whole thing.
But it's like normal conversation, but it's like you're trying to put yourself in a situation and
Where
respond.
you're not yourself
Yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also role playing, and one of the things they have in Dungeons and Dragons specifically is your alignment, and your alignment is a categorization of moral and ethical perspective of your player, which basically gives the dungeon master an idea of what your motivations are generally, and also sometimes depending on the dungeon master, they will say you're not acting like you've got your character set up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like your alignment is this. So you want to try and stay as true as possible, because sometimes the dungeon master may give you shit if you give someone a flower and you normally wouldn't give them a flower or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's something silly. Anyway, the way they've got those organized is on a grid, and there are 9 different categorizations.
Oh, wow.
So the 2 axes for the alignments, there's lawful and chaotic, which are rules oriented, whether you obey the rules or don't obey the rules, right?
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is good and evil. And that is your motives. Are they for yourself, your own gain, or for everyone else's benefit?
Yeah.
Generally, like your motives,
Yeah.
right? In the middle of those, there's neutral. So you like, if you do that across the top and the bottom, you've got 9 different sub-genres of your alignment. And I think a lot of video games generally try and attack the morality problem in storytelling by putting things on a very black or white spectrum.
Yeah.
Which I think is problematic.
Well, that's not like real life. I don't know. I feel like video games, it's like it creates expectations. If you like, I don't know, if you play a lot of video games, it's like, you know, and then everything in the video game is black and white. It's like, and especially if you like you're young, like if you're like a kid or like a young teenager, it's like, yeah, like that could be problematic for sure.
What about your thoughts on, speaking of morals and ethics, Grand Theft Auto, right? The big thing about Grand Theft Auto a lot of times was you were doing all these things to fulfill some sort of, I don't know if it was a fantasy or you were
It's just
acting...
like, okay, as someone that played Grand Theft Auto a lot when they were like 13, it's just fun. Like, it's so like, the thing though is like, obviously as somebody, I feel like growing up religious, I had like a very, like, I've always been like, I guess in like the eyes of, if we're looking at the stance of like a Catholic stance, I tried to be like very moral person, and I never really did anything super crazy when I was like that age already. So I wasn't really impressionable when it came to stuff like Grand Theft Auto. I was just like, oh, this is just like a fun thing, whatever. I like was able to make that distinction.
Right.
But like, it's just fun to like do stuff that you could never do ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like drive like all messed up and you know, like, I don't know. Also there's like stuff where like you can just like swim and like, you know, like do weird crap that like you would never ever do. Right.
But it's there are things like intentionally shooting people or beating up people or doing things that are morally and ethically, you know, not allowed.
Yeah.
But it's not to fill that void. It's just because it's an option.
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Is it just an option, or does this impact the way people see the world?
I feel like also that is a thing that comes with how much you play it. Like things like that, I guess, in my opinion, are better in smaller, you know, doses. It's like, obviously, it's like if a young person that's like, I don't know, like young person as in like a child is playing Grand Theft Auto like all day, every day for like however long, obviously it's going to warp some type of worldview.
Right.
Like while your brain is developing, and that's what you're intaking. And like, you know, I mean, we can look at stuff like Call of Duty too. Then it's like there are soldiers that go into battle every day and like kill people. And then obviously as somebody that's like a neuroscience major, stuff like PTSD that like a lot of veterans are struggling with, it's very serious, but it's almost desensitized. And then I'm kind of like Grand Theft Auto. It's like, I feel like Grand Theft Auto, in my opinion, it's almost so preposterous that like, to me, I'm like, bruh, like no way. Like, you know, but like stuff like Call of Duty, that's like more serious to me because that's like somebody's like actual real life. First, I guess Grand Theft Auto, like, since it is like, whenever I played it, it was always like a gang member.
Right.
Which again, that is also very desensitized in today's, you know, but maybe it's, I mean, maybe because of things like Grand Theft Auto.
I think making the distinction between a story that you're telling about a character and how you play that character, if it is a role-playing game, truly a role-playing game where you make the decisions and you're not following a path that everyone else is, right, as far as going on missions, then it turns into, like, what are the consequences for the choices you make throughout the game? But not a lot of people do that. They kind of have these dynamics that are skirting, well, they're kind of flirting with what morality is by making good or bad decisions that are either good or evil. Like I think of a couple games.
Like if you make a decision, like one decision is good and one decision's evil, but you don't necessarily know which is which. So when you're picking it, it's kind of like, well, or you do know.
Well, I mean, you'd like to think people know that raping the prostitute is the bad thing, and letting the prostitute go is, or I don't want to say prostitute, but it's like,
I get what you're saying. Like in the context of Grand Theft Auto,
right? Yeah, in the context of that. But I mean, there are in games like there's a game, Dante's Inferno, which came out by Visceral Games, who came out with a really awesome aliens kind of game called Dead Space. That franchise died with Visceral Games when they died, which is unfortunate. But anyway, you make decisions in that, and then these morality mechanics where you can either let someone live or decapitate them. In a way, what it does is it determines the end of the story, like how evil or how good you are. And there are a lot of examples of that. Mass Effect, the franchise of Mass Effect, anything having to do with BioWare, they do things where you're either a paragon or a renegade. Mm-hmm. It's black or white, whether or not you, and it's not like good or evil, it's whether or not you do things against the grain or you do things that are lawful. I think it's more of a lawful chaotic sort of thing as opposed to a good versus evil. Yeah. The way you attack these problems.
Well, yeah, and like going back to what we were saying about like, sorry, that just like rung a bell, like about like this whole like, you know, like people coming out with like their gender and it being more socially acceptable, and like as a society we're progressing like positively. It's like back in, I don't know, like 60 years ago, like Norah was saying, with those people that committed suicide because they're homosexual and it was like, you know, outlawed. It's like now I feel like this whole lawful and chaotic, since people didn't know about it or weren't educated, were ignorant about like that perspective, immediately was like, oh no, it's bad. Like, and immediately put it on like the evil side because, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like society was defined as, okay, well, lawful obviously is like, you know, good. Anything outside of that green is a no. Yeah. You know, and then put in a context like stuff like religion and like that whole thing too.
Here's the other thing too. If that didn't happen or it wasn't even publicized or whatever, would it be different? Like if there wasn't, you know, if it wasn't, if you have 25 different people, not as a group doing it together, where it was like all these people,
like it wasn't a mass suicide. You're saying,
as opposed to just individual suicides not being talked about. I mean, would the conversation about, you know, how you feel as a human being and what you feel about the opposite sex or the same sex and what that means to you, would that conversation be different if things like that didn't happen? It's a horrible thing to happen, but I'd like to think we'd be talking about things like that if we didn't go through that. But, you know, sometimes it takes a really shitty thing to start having the conversation.
It's as a person in the LGBTQ plus community, I'm just kind of like, It's really upsetting and disappointing,
Right.
obviously, that people even had to go through that
Yeah.
and feel that pain. And I feel lucky that I'm like in a world where it is more socially acceptable. Like, even if where I'm from doesn't necessarily like accept me and who I am, it's like I know there are people out there that will.
Right. Right.
But it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And maybe that obviously like the intention in that awful thing that happened,
Yeah.
you know, was to bring awareness about it.
So these are my kind of beefs with video game dynamics as
Okay.
far as good decisions versus bad decisions, moral decisions versus immoral decisions. There was a game, Fallout 3, where it was you had, decisions that you had to make about certain situations, some of which would make you a good person, positive or
Yeah.
evil,
Yeah.
based on how you handled those situations. One of the situations I was put into was one where you go to a slave labor camp, and there's a guy who's got a slave, and they're telling you that you have to go somewhere to do something and bring back these slaves or whatever to their camp.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's the scenario,
yeah.
right? And you're going out, so you can either just tell him to, screw himself, or, kill the guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Or you can do some combination of taking the slaves back, but then killing the guy, or like, do all these different things. And one of the slaves, that's one of his slaves, a slave girl, becomes your friend after you rescue her, which seems very strange to me. But I put her in a suit of power armor, and then she would mow people down with a big Gatling gun that she had, so she was fine. She kept on complaining that she didn't have a big enough gun, but it was like, dude, you've got the biggest gun in the game, all right? So,
Yeah.
silly things that don't really impact the story, right?
Yeah.
And some things where it impacts the story, but it's either a good ending or a bad ending, or a sequence of endings that by making these choices throughout the game, whether or not it's moral or not, will yield certain endings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think that is necessarily the point. I mean, I've discussed many times on the show, I want to be told a story. I want to, if I'm reading a book about a good book about a character or a group of characters, I want that to take me places and make me think about things that I wouldn't normally. I want to go on that journey. And whether or not you're making moral or ethical decisions as a part of that as a character, I don't think that's necessarily, it's not the point. You're telling the story, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You want to make good moral decisions if you have the option to, but you're telling a story, but you're also killing hundreds and hundreds of people. What does that mean? That's not very ethical or whatever, but it's part of, like you're playing a game, you're beating up people, you're beating up beings, you're killing beings. It's a weird sort of thing, and I try not to think about it more than it's a story that I'm being told.
Well, I don't know. I feel like when it's like the video game ends and it either has a positive ending, like super positive, it's like the two extremes,
Right.
I feel like that's like part of the appeal though, because that's like not how real life is at all.
Right.
So it's
a
like,
fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fairy tale.
It's like maybe that's like what is part of the, with stories, like the whole appeal to those type of things, because it's not how life works.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, it creates these like false ideas about what life is really about.
Right. Or unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like nothing ever has either a completely positive or a completely negative.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, there could be some things that are like completely negative, but even then, like somebody's always going to benefit,
right.
like from certain things happening.
But
like,
I mean, there's a personal benefit, and then there's, if you're doing it for yourself, what is that motivation?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
One other game I want to say before we close out the show really quick is this game called Detroit Become Human. And Detroit Become Human by Quantic Dream came out in 2018. It was a game where it was, speaking of Turing, which we also talked about with Norah, the Turing test as far as how you determine whether an AI is sentient or to what extent, right
Okay.
there. And so in this game, we've got a story of these basically robot servants that are basically, robots that are designed and go through life doing their job, or, it's basically robots developing their AI to a point where they're becoming human.
Okay. Yeah.
And what happens along the way is you've got different decisions that can end the story for. You've got 3 different characters that you play as throughout it. So the whole thing is a big choose your own adventure. You're doing things like trying to determine what's happening. Like there's a scene where you're one of the androids that is a police android, and you are targeted with determining whether or not these androids are corrupted.
Okay.
By the fact that they feel like they're human and they live. So there's a moral and ethical sort of thing there. And then also, like, all these games from Quantic Dream have these kind of questions about how you as a character respond. And I think when I think of games that do it right as far as that's concerned, as far as the moral and ethical things, it's games like that they tell an interesting story. But the problem with that is I don't want to play through it and have like 15,000 endings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's generally where it is. And they've got a cool in Detroit Become Human, they've got an interesting flow chart. So if you like don't accomplish certain tasks after the fact, it'll tell you, you can play through the chapter again and get all the endings that you want. So you can actually go through and kind of play all
like
the
see
endings.
Everything. Yeah. Yeah.
But I just played it once and it was like, okay, well,
yeah.
one of my androids tried to escape to Canada and she got killed with her child because because there was some robot revolution that occurred and there was a big, it's like, it's a big dramatic story.
Yeah.
But a lot of kind of moral and ethical questions about artificial intelligence and when do they become a human?
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but also complex.
That is another can of worms.
That's another can of worms. Let's wrap this up by saying, do you have anything else about morality that you want to talk about? Like morality or s'mores even?
I just, probably that I'm just like a s'mores advocate. I don't know. As I feel like a lot of the general population.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then also, morality's a paradox.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
As like literally what we talked about last time is also a paradox, like religion and everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like when anything in humanity, when it's like at least somewhat subjective, it's like there's always going to be another side of the story.
Right.
And therefore it makes a paradox.
Yeah. But it's a navigation. It's how you live life.
Oh, well, yeah.
I think,
and
right?
then like, society just will continue to evolve. Yeah. And we'll continue to understand people more.
Hopefully.
And be more inclusive. Well, I'm saying that we will because I'm like, let's manifest it.
Okay.
That like,
I totally agree with you.
That like, we continue the track we're on, because everyone deserves it for real.
I tend to agree with that as well. But I also have seen shifts where I thought things were going in the right direction, but then it was made very obvious. But let's not even talk about that. Let's end this on a happy note.
All right.
I have a story. We also talked about morals, as in like the moral of the story.
Oh yeah.
There is a quote from a movie called Blue Thunder, which came out I think in the 1980s, about a really advanced helicopter that was put out by a military company that was going to be used for urban pacification, and it was very high tech and it can do all sorts of recording and things, but it was a police helicopter.
Yeah.
The LA police were, trying to use it, and they basically they record something they shouldn't have with, people die and stuff. But anyway, there was a line in it that I'm going to try and do the line for the closing of the show.
Okay.
Which is, I like morals, don't you? The moral of the story is, if you're walking on eggs, don't hop. So anyway, that's the moment.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. From the movie Blue Thunder, Roy Scheider and the guy who was in what's that dude's name? The guy who was in Home Alone.
Yeah. Oh,
the tall guy. The tall guy
the
with
tall burglar with like the weird hair.
Yep.
Yeah.
That
was
dude
in
was he was
Nice.
he was his partner who basically got run over.
He was the partner in
He
the
was the
second one
partner.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm talking about Blue Thunder. He was the partner in Blue Thunder.
No, he's the partner in Home Alone
Yep.
and the partner in Blue Thunder.
He's
got a
and he's also the voice in the Wonder Years. Is that what he was too? I think he was the voice too of that.
I'll say if not, if it wasn't for the third one, I'm like he's been typecasted.
But anyway, on that note, thank you for joining us, Jenna, on the word morality.
Yeah.
We're going to have you again because you are very studious and you've got a lot of philosophical sort of things.
I hope so. I'm paying for it. So
well, not now.
Oh, well,
you're going to be paying for it later.
Yeah.
I think, right?
I think 2026 is when I start. So
oh boy,
I'm so excited. It's going to be awesome.
I can tell. My name is Ben.
I'm Jenna.
And we've been your hosts. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay.
Dope.